Sure. I move to approve the minutes from the November meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Those not in favor say nay.
Aye.
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 Approved.
Great. So now I'd like to invite all those of you that are on in this meeting, but are not kind of regular board members to join me in taking the oath to tell the truth. Even if you think you might not speak, I encourage you to take the oath should you feel during the public comment period compelled to speak anyway. So either if you're the applicant or one of the folks that have expressed interest in commenting, either in writing or in the meeting today, please repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth.
I swear to tell the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And
nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next agenda item. Any changes to the agenda?
Chair, no changes.
Well, we only have, okay, so no change order. The changes to the agenda.
Yeah, Charlie said no changes. I think you might have missed that, Tice.
Yeah, there's no changes.
Or we might have just lost Tice.
I think we lost ties.
Would it be appropriate to move for Rick Kinzinger to temporarily chair the meeting? Go ahead and proceed.
It looks like we've got Tice back now.
Okay.
I think you're still muted, Tice, but.
All right, I'm back, but my connection is definitely going in and out. So I will. I'm going to move to the first case, but I'm going to call in on my cell phone to make sure I actually have audio.
All right. Well, while Tice is doing that, I'm going to read in this first case. So the first case on the agenda, BZA case 18-2020. The address is 1063 Broadview Avenue. Applicant Nathan D. Fisher. Owners Nathan D. and Catherine S. Fisher. Zoned RS1. There are two parts. Part A, the applicant is requesting a variance from Grandview Heights Planning and Zoning Code Section 1155.01C2C to reduce the minimum required rear yard requirement of 30 feet to 20 feet for a new rear yard two-story addition onto an existing two-story single-family dwelling. And B, the applicant is seeking aesthetic review approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals per Grandview Heights Planning and Zoning Code Section 1155.07 aesthetic review procedure for a new rear yard two-story addition onto an existing two-story single-family dwelling. Not sure if Tice is back with us yet.
Yep, I'm here. I called in on my cell phone. Can you hear me?
Yep. Why don't you take it over here?
Thanks for introducing the case. So the first thing I'd like to do is to ask the applicant to briefly introduce the the need for this addition and sort of generally talk us through the case. What are we looking at here?
Okay, great. Thanks. Wanted to just start off by thanking the board and the neighbors and the other various folks that are on the call. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us. Nathan Fisher, Nate, and my wife Catherine here, Kate. We've been around the Grandview area. We also for a long time. And so, one of the things that brought us to the area, we actually own Roxbury Arms Apartments over in Marble Cliff. So we've been around the area for about 30 years and decided this is the place where we wanted to raise our family. Moved over here in 2011. And so this would be our third location that we've lived here in the Grandview area. And, the character is very important to us. So the submission that we've made is trying to respect the character of the community. So that is kind of what we've settled on, what we submitted here. One of the things, we do have a pretty large family. We're very active. We do have a lot of toys. We have 3 kids. We have a 14-year-old boy, a 11-year-old daughter, 9-year-old boy. And, one of the reasons is our family is expanding. We do plan to stay in this house for a long time. So we're not going anywhere. We're not a developer looking to flip the home. This is going to be a home that we're going to stay in for a long time. With a 14-year-old son, he's going to be a driver shortly. So parking of vehicles and things is of importance to us. So that was, one of the reasons for the expansion of the space. I'm a property manager. I do manage other places. So I do have, equipment and things that are part of my business. Currently working out of the home a little bit, not 100% of the time. That's one of the additional things for the request. But really, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my architects that are on the phone or on the call, and they can kind of go into the details and some of the background and what we're requesting. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Gunzelman Architecture to please speak regarding what we're requesting.
Sure. Hi, can everyone hear me? Good evening, and thank you for hearing our proposal. My name is Megan Dixon. I'm from Gunzelman Architecture, and I believe Lori Gunzelman is also in attendance. As the owner stated, the goal for the addition was to not only add a garage, but primarily to accommodate their large family with additional livable square footage at both the first and second floors. So what we are proposing is an addition at the location of the existing deck and pergola, which would be removed. That location of the addition to the rear occurred firstly to remain hidden from Broadview Avenue, maintaining that the existing house is the predominant view from the street. And secondly, due to the extreme grading of the site, it would allow driveway access at grade with the private drive to the rear. To preserve all existing bedroom windows on the rear facade at the existing house, we are extending the addition toward the rear property line. At the point of connection between the addition and the existing house, the massing narrows to connect with the existing dormer and to break up the overall massing of the addition. We do lose a bedroom at this connection point, but we replace it and add a bedroom above the garage. The addition, it takes cues from characteristics of the existing house. In size, we're proposing a 1.5-story structure, and in materials, including the shaker style shingle siding, a stone water table, and double hung windows. Our intention, it's not to match entirely with the existing house, but to take cues from it and allow the homeowner to update the existing house at a future date. The addition, its footprint adds about 1,290 square feet to the site, modifying lot coverage to 15%, so well under the max, and adds just under 1,400 square feet of livable square footage to the house itself. The owner stated the desire for additional living, dining, and garage space at the first floor, which is what's locating this addition 10 feet over the 30-foot rear yard setback. But the 20-foot rear yard setback would still allow for off-street parking and maneuverability. Well, I thank you again, and at this point, the owner and I would be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thanks very much for that helpful introduction. Next, I'd like to turn it over to the staff and consultant to kind of explain the staff report that we have seen about this case. So, Consultant Kulker or Director Beauchesne, do you want to talk about the staff report and your assessment of the case?
Sure. I'll run through the staff report for you. I think the applicant did a nice job explaining the general lay of the land, so to speak, for this project, and it is relatively straightforward. The site does slope, as they mentioned, both to the east as well as to the north, and so the predominant flat, available buildable land is directly behind the home, as they mentioned. The two considerations really, I think, that are salient, particularly salient here. One, as they mentioned, the green space preservation of that towards the front of Broadview Avenue. Obviously, the existing home is justified to the rear of the lot quite substantially, which is part of the development pattern of this area. So to add on to the home while maintaining that Broadview Avenue green space, adding to the rear does preserve the appearance of the existing home as far as scale and historic context is concerned. And then Charlie, if you want to just, I'm not sure who actually has the sorry, maybe I can take over sharing content. Can I do that?
I think you can.
All right, I'm going to try. Oh, you have to stop first. Oh, wait a minute. Stop. No, I get to just take it over, I guess. Okay. So are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we're seeing it. You could hit full screen, I think. You're
Maybe. Is that better?
sure. For me, it's fine. If anybody's has any issues, let us know.
Okay. So again, the view from Broadview will remain pretty much unchanged, and you can see to the right there, that's the building pad. The normal zoning in this area would, let's see here, would require a 30-foot setback, as you know. Relevant, I think, maybe would be that also other normally applicable zoning requirements here would let you build a detached structure as close as 3 feet to the rear property line. So not that they're proposing that, it's obviously an attached garage, but just in terms of viewing the zoning requirements for this unusual lot in context with the rest of the code, which is also probably not directly, didn't necessarily have this particular lot in mind because it is a unique lot compared to many in the district. The setback is still an amount that will allow for separation from the lot to the rear because of the shared drive that is behind the existing, the existing lot. And if you could, I'm sure that there are other ways to configure the space, but the question is whether there's a practical difficulty involved related to the topography of the lot. And then aesthetic review, I think the applicant also covered this pretty nicely. The home is a kind of vernacular style, borrowing some elements from the English cottage and shingle style architecture the addition materiality and geometry kind of borrow from the existing home while at the same time being distinct from the home. There is separation that's evident from the existing home to the new home, given the geometry of what has been proposed. So both in material and scale and placement on the lot, we feel that the addition is deferential in terms of its major presentation to the public street, and feel that therefore the design guidelines are met. One possible point of discussion could be the fenestration for the home. The existing home has, I believe it's 6/6 mutton pattern, and the proposed mutton pattern is quite different from that. So that might be an architectural consideration that you might want to consider. Beyond that, not in the staff report, but something we've been made aware of is that there's potentially a utility conflict. And so I guess I would ask the applicant to provide additional information if there is any with regard to that consideration. And otherwise, that is all I would have from a staff report perspective. If you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, thank you very much. So now I'd like to move to our public comment section of the meeting. I'd like to note that I have received, and as of the other board members, 3 written comments signed by a total of 7 people. So I have reviewed comments by Robert and Elaine Hughes from 1041 Grandview. That email had the title BZA case 18-2020. I reviewed comments submitted by Natalie and Pierre Wolf and Tracy and Mark Showalter at 1049 Broadview Ave and 1059 Broadview Ave. The title of that email was Public Comments, 1063 Broadview Avenue. And then I've reviewed comments by Elizabeth Lawless, 1626 Goodale Boulevard, with the title of the email being, caption the email being Public Comments, 1063 Broadview Avenue, Variance and Aesthetic Review. So my question to staff is, did we receive additional written comments in addition to these 3?
No, we did not. I compiled everything and sent you what we had.
Wonderful. So that means that we have a good understanding of the written comments, and it's my understanding that we have 5 requests for spoken comments or oral comments today in the meeting. Is that correct, Megan?
Yes, with the addition of Anthony Panzera.
So that's 6.
So 6 altogether.
All right. So I'll open the meeting for public comment. My intuition is to do it in the order in which we receive the comments. Do you have that handy, Megan?
Not handy, but you could start with Tracy Showalter. I just have a list of those that requested a line.
Okay. So as I invite individual folks who have requested to speak, I'd like to remind you to keep your comments kind of to the point and courteous. We're a friendly small community, I'd like to think. And if given the interest of time, if you go sort of well over 3 to 4 minutes, I might ask you to wrap things up. So please keep your comments to the point, and keep in mind that we have read your written comments already. So with that, Ms. Showalter, do you want to tell us your views?
Go ahead, Aunt Beth. I heard you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question before we get started. The comments were made that it's approximately 1,400 square feet addition. If you see on this page we're looking at, it says 1290. So I guess which one is it? See what I mean down here at the bottom right?
Megan Dixon from Gunselman, if I can speak to that. The 1290 is the footprint. The 1400 I was interior square footage, first and second floor.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to step in here and remind you that even though I'm on a cell phone, I'd like this meeting to be relatively orderly. So I'm going to invite you to ask questions of the applicant or make your verbal comments in order, because otherwise this meeting is going to get even more chaotic, which I think is something that we'd all like to avoid. So again, I'm going to call everybody who wanted to speak in order, and then invite you in about 3 to 4 minutes to ask your questions of the applicant or state your views on the application. Please wait until I call on you, because otherwise we're going to be here for a very long time and it's going to be unpleasant for all involved. So Ms. Showalter, would you like to either ask your question or give us your perspective on the application?
Yeah, well, so we didn't cover the whole gas line utility issue. Is there anything we can speak to that?
This is
You're welcome to speak to that if you'd like during your comment session.
You're saying that to me? It was asked to the applicant, to the Fishers, but we didn't get an answer.
Could we get? I hate to interrupt the intended order of this, but could we get staff to maybe comment on that? Because I think that is an interesting question. That I'm not sure what the procedure is for making sure there is not a utility easement and that sort of. Yeah, in any building, how do we know that there isn't a utility easement in the way, that kind of stuff?
for the board, this is Charlie. The applicant did provide a boundary survey for us. There was no indication of an easement that was on that survey. That doesn't mean it wasn't there. But I've also talked to the service department about any future work there. There's nothing planned for up there that he knows of, the service director, for next year. There could be possibly in the future. One of the things that the applicant does have to do is they would have to, before they do any digging, they've got to contact UFPO, and that would identify where the gas line is. If that seems to be an issue for the board, they can always make a condition that, you know, they verify that prior to any digging. And then if they need to come back to the board because the line is there, then, you know, that they would have to do that if it affects the addition.
Thanks for that clarification, Charlie. Go ahead, Ms. Showalter.
Okay, thank you. I'm confident that the neighbors that follow me can, I'm sure, speak a lot more eloquently. I'm just going to speak on some of the things that I heard when the applicant has initially presented the project. And as you received from the public comments, the 1059, Mark and Tracy Showalter, we are completely opposed to this particular project. We're not opposed to them doing something. But some of the things that I'm hearing, right? We've been in Grandview a long time. We're respecting the character. You know, I'm hearing that we want to protect some green space. But what I'll tell you is this is just a big building taking up a ton of yard. It is absolutely compromising green space and greenery up here from our concern. And I love the house. That's personal opinion. It is a very large house. It is 3,200 square feet. We have 3 kids also. We live in 2,900. It's a personal preference. I understand that, but they're adding on this massive piece that will considerably block a lot of our land. It will take up a ton of the green space where all of our children play up here. We've got a lot of issues with potential safety concerns because it will block a lot of things. So it will absolutely change the quaint, beautiful little space. And there aren't that many of these spaces up here in Grandview anymore. You know, it's one of the things that brought us up here. It's hard to read when you hear practical difficulty. That was one of the keywords that we saw in that letter so much, but it's a beautiful lot. I'm sure there are other ways that this whole project can be designed. I do know that, you know, the Fishers really, really wanted this house, but it seems like it's such a difficult project. And they talk about, you know, they're very active and they have a lot of kids and a lot of toys and a lot of cars. Personally speaking, And if you guys were living up here, you wouldn't want that either. I mean, there are lots of things up here and it's just so crowded on the lot. And now we're talking about adding 1,400 more square feet. We're talking about this 5,000, almost 5,000 square foot castle up here. And it just does not seem to fit the way that the plans have it lined up. It seems, when I am hearing the architect talk about like they're preserving the windows at the back of the house, but we're not preserving these two beautiful trees or any of the yard back here. Obviously, you can tell it's very personal to me. It will be personal to all of our neighbors. We just really, really want to preserve this special area up here. We're a close-knit family. I just really would be terrible to see this happen.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next in order, at least in my order here, is Robert and Elaine Hughes. Are you on the call? Would you like to give us your views on this case?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Can you, are you able to hear us? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Yep, it's Robert Lane Hughes. We live at 1041 Broadview, and we've been here for 40 years. We've seen a lot of issues kind of come and be worked through. I would also like to say that we're thrilled to have Nate and his family in the community. And we know for sure we've met Nate and his wife briefly, and they're super people, and they have the best interest of the community at heart. We're sure of that. I think we're at it's kind of at the end of the line and have this ongoing gas problem, so I can shed a little light on that. Since we are at the end of the line, and since it's a low pressure area, the gas company is aware of this, and they've been here so many times and excavated, on our property 4 times in the last 4 years. And finally, they were able to install a drip pan on our property right beside our driveway. And they've told me that we are in highlight, and that's speak for we are on the docket to have the gas line replaced. It would probably be in the next year or so. And the gas line, it looks to me like from past experience and looking at the line they drew a couple years ago, it would probably run through the proposed garage, the new proposed garage at 1063. Also, we knew the original owners of the Lawless, what's now the Beth Lawless home, and that was Mr. Harry and Dorothy Fowler. They, out of the goodness of their heart, they provided the easement up here because there's that one driveway. I don't know how many of you have physically seen it, but it's a driveway that's probably maybe 10, 11 foot wide. It goes up and then has a sharp turn to the right. And all the delivery trucks, Amazon, everything else that comes up here, mail trucks and so forth and so on, when they come up, they have to accelerate a little bit to get it to make a sharp right turn. And it's vitally important for the kids and the safety of the pedestrians. We like to walk around little turnaround area that we have. It's really vital to be able for the vehicles to pass and navigate safely, and also to retain a sight line so that when the trucks come, vehicles, cars, etc., come up the hill and turn right quickly, because they have to accelerate a little bit to get around that turn. that sightline really, it needs to be preserved in order to avoid a human catastrophe. So there's the gas line, the sight line to consider. And we would love for Nate to maybe go back, maybe rethink this just a little bit and do something wonderful. And as it stands now, the two residents, my wife and myself, Elaine, would be opposed to this as it stands now. And we'd love to see a new and wonderful plan, because we know that Nate has everyone's best interest and the community at heart, and that's important. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. and Ms. Hughes, for your comments as well. Next, I'd like to invite Natalie and Pierre Wolf to speak if they are so inclined.
Yes, thank you. I'm Pierre Wolf, and next to me is Natalie Wolf. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some feedback. We are not opposed to Nate and Kate expanding their home. They obviously have a need for it. We are, however, opposed to the proposed layout, which is to expand from an eastward to westward location, primarily because of a security issue for our community up here, also from an aesthetic point of view, and also for the preservation of the two trees that will have to be cut down, which are over 100 years old. Going back to the security issue, there is a lot of traffic coming in and out of this cul-de-sac. Vehicles from FedEx, UPS, postal, emergency vehicles, and also regular traffic, obviously, from visitors as well. This east to west expansion of the property, in addition to also adding a parking pad, would visually impair our ability to see who's coming up. It would create, I think, a danger zone for the children, particularly the small children who play on the driveway. So I think that from that perspective, we would prefer to see something that is redesigned, that would incorporate the changes that are needed in terms of living space from a north to south perspective, an attachment going north to south, and the garage to be added to the existing garage on the northeastern side in sort of an L shape. That would be much more logical and would preserve the sight line, would preserve the trees, and would preserve also what is really a wonderful visual plan of this whole cul-de-sac. This is the reason why we moved up here. We didn't feel claustrophobic on top of each other. And I think that current design would just really change the feel of what we have, which is so special up here. Natalie?
As a little background on us, we've lived here in Grandview for 14 years, have lived here in this home for over 12. We have raised two sons here who both were drivers. Our house has a single car garage and parking for 4 cars stacked 2 and 2. So although there is always a desire to have things maybe just the way we want them, I think there's also ways of accommodating what we need and getting some of what we want. So I think this addition is too large for the space. There's reasons for setbacks, and those setbacks should be adhered to. In this particular case, if you don't mind going back to the illustration that shows the layout of the house with the addition from the aerial. So if we zoom in on that a little bit, we'll see, thank you very much. See that where the new drive is proposed, between the 50-foot section of wall and where the drive is, and with the intention that there will be cars parked perpendicularly from the common driveway in that drive. If you were to stand in the circle, the visual plane is blocked by the structure and by parked vehicles. And that is a significant safety concern. These two houses have 6 children under the age of 14. Many of us have pets. We have people who cut through from Summit Chase who walk on this driveway. So this is a communal space in a lot of ways. And I think that this proposed plan just hasn't taken that as fully into consideration as it should. And with that in mind, again, we support them making enhancements to their home. We just added a front porch to our home, and it fits obviously aesthetically with the community. The substantial expense of that was foundation work, because we know very well how it is to live on a house that's a hill, and the extra money and the extra consideration that it takes to accommodate this special place. And the Showalters likewise did a nice addition to their home to give the space that they anticipated needing. And they did not require a variance to make it happen. So these are the considerations that people who understand fully what it's like to be here and enjoy this place take into account and consideration. So I really think that it's not that something shouldn't be constructed if that's their wish for the enjoyment of their property, but I don't think that this is the plan that should be approved. And given that there's some indication that changes will be made to this plan, it doesn't seem that tonight is the night to make a decision with outstanding issues about utility work, outstanding issues about potential change in design, and because of these safety concerns, and in order for them to be fully considered. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for those comments. Moving along my list, Ms. Lawless, you are next. And again, we've read your comments, so if you want to highlight specific elements or add to them, that's great. But we are aware, I think, of the, well, no, I know that we are aware of the written comments. So please, in about 3 or 4 minutes, can you give your comments on this case?
Yeah, first I want to say I've lived in Grandview 42 years, been in this house 31 years, and I really enjoy the Fishers moving in. For a long time, we didn't have any kids on the circle, and I love seeing the kids playing. It makes it a much more enlivened and interesting environment. I do have a huge concern, though, over with this garage there. It is going to block view for trucks whipping in and out. And I'm even a little worried about like emergency vehicles coming up. You know, if the cars are sticking perpendicular out to the common driveway, it's already tight enough. I mean, I know a fire truck has no chance, but, you know, even for a SWAT or some sort of emergency situation, right now you can run over the grass, not ideal, but it's doable. Once there's a building plot there, that's not going to be possible. That's probably my biggest concern, is the safety. Also, from an aesthetic standpoint, I am the one that faces the circle. Everyone else faces over to Summit Chase. My lot is in the exclusion zone for Goodale, so I can't build in front so that everyone in Grandview can enjoy the green space, but it's sort of sad that somehow my view is not taken into account, in that, you know, my view will be blocked. The other issue or question is, when you look at the plans, it says roof height should keep the roof line lower than the roof line of the original house. From the drawings, it does not look like that is the case. So I guess that's a question someone can answer when I finish my comments. Another comment is, and it's really an issue for me, as we've added onto the driveway, we keep just adding on layers. And what's happened is I'm much lower. So whenever it rains, I get rain in my garage. It runs down the front of the house, tearing out the grass. And I'm not sure exactly what the height or elevation issue is, but I know just covering more of the lot with building there's less grass to absorb it. And I hope at some point my house doesn't just, wash down the hill here. So I would like that to be taken into consideration from a aesthetic point of view. I think everyone else covered the other issues. It seems like there is a way to redesign this so that, obviously it's going to take up some of that green space, but there's a way to do it without obstructing the view when you're coming in and out of the driveway, as well as not taking up, again, more water absorbing green space by putting the garage in front and maybe changing the orientation of the addition. I think that would be much better for all of this and something that should be considered. So if someone would answer the roof line question, that would be great. And I won't go into the rant I put in my written comments.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Lawless, and your commitment to a concision. I do, before we move, we will discuss the roof line issue, I would imagine, as during board discussion. Right now, we're in this public comment section of the meeting, so I'm sure we'll come back to the roof line issue later, but I do want to get Mr. Panzera an opportunity to speak as well. I do have one question for you, Ms. Lawless. You mentioned in your written comments that you had not been notified of this meeting in writing. Is that correct?
I still have not been. That is correct. I don't think Hughes's or Wolf's were either, is my understanding. We never received any sort of letter, certified or otherwise, still to this day in the mail today.
Correct.
We received it today.
You did received it today?
Today.
Okay.
The Wolf household.
All right. Thanks for that clarification. I'll be sure to address that during the board discussion as well, but I just wanted to make sure that that part of your written comments didn't get lost. So the Wolves have received written notification today, but Ms. Lawless, you have not received notification as of today?
That's correct. And
okay, thank you.
Hughes's had not received it as of this morning. Now maybe it came in today's mail.
Okay, thanks.
Quick, one of those issues was, this easement with the driveway, because I think my property did, originally own it. I know I paid taxes on it from 89 to 2005. So I was going to check to see if there was any other footage for the easement, but with such little, no notice actually officially, I haven't been able to look into that. So that would be my last comment.
All right, thanks very much. So now our final commenter, Mr. Panzera, would you like to provide your views on the case?
Hello, yes, I would. Thank you. Thank you for everyone, to everyone for taking the time this evening. All of the things that have been described about the venue of our homes is very accurate. We have a very unique setting here. If members of the board have not been able to personally visit it, I would encourage that. All of us previous to moving here, I think I'm third ranking in tenure behind Beth and the Hughes. So I've been here almost 20 years. Joy and I both, and of course we raised the boys here. And we didn't, I lived in Grandview my whole entire life and didn't know that this area behind what you see as the streetscape with great respect to my neighbors, whom all I love and care for a great deal, and acknowledge and understand the opposition that they've expressed, I do not share that opinion. I have reviewed this in depth, and to me, there is a very, very, very much worse outcome that does not require a variance, and that is to simply detach the garage, and then the owner could build that garage 17 feet further west than proposed. This is a best case outcome. This is the best thing that can be done regarding the variance requirements of an attached structure. There's a lot of comments, and it's not meant to be argumentative. The expressions that have been stated are passionate and very heartfelt and very important, as are mine, which is that if this should be denied from a rear yard setback perspective, a simple building permit could be issued for a detached garage that would be far more intrusive into the common area that we all share and that we all enjoy. Line of sight issues are somewhat at play, but the line of sight that we had from the northernmost property here was broken up, a few years ago when the Showalters did the addition. There's nothing wrong with that. I have no complaints about it. All I'm saying is there's no detraction from my personal enjoyment of my property because I already have been limited as far as the line of sight that previously afforded me the visual perspective of the Wolf's home, backyard, and the Hughes' home and backyard. That went away for us a few years ago. This is no more intrusive than what we experience now from our perspective. Wayfinding signs can be added to request. It's a private drive, so there is no ability for actual street signage, but private signage could be added to encourage traffic that enters the circle to enter into the left and go through the roundabout in a rightward direction so that when those vehicles are exiting the cul-de-sac, they're exiting on a clean line of sight in a straight direction rather than having to make the right turn. As far as the addition itself and its program space, if you will, this addition could also be done without variance to the front of the home, which would be a far worse outcome to the community streetscape and the view that all of us enjoy, both as residents and as visitors to the street, from Broadview Avenue itself. In other words, and maybe staff can respond to this, but the front yard setback would allow them to virtually place this entire addition into the front of the home, but would be extraordinarily disruptive to the streetscape. So we have to weigh, I feel, the way that I've reached my decision and my opinion about this is by comparing this submittal to what the applicant could do without any Board of Zoning Appeals acknowledgement, request, or approval whatsoever. With a simple building permit within code, the applicant could do what they want in a far worse outcome. So those are my thoughts. Again, I have the utmost respect for all of us. We do wish to keep a safe environment here, but the other options that could be approved without BZA and without a BZA submittal, those other options are far worse in consideration. So that summarizes my comments, and thanks again for all of you, to all of you for.
All right, thank you very much for those comments. So do we have anybody else on the line who has not spoken yet but would like to issue or contribute verbal comments to today's meeting? Megan, have we had any other requests?
We have not.
All right, then I'd like to close public comment for today's meeting and move into the next portion of our meeting, which is board discussion. So at this point, I'd like to invite my fellow board members to give us their views.
If you don't mind, but I'd like to go first because I have a couple of, I guess, structural questions about this that are less, I guess, that I'd like some answers to before getting into the opinion part of this. most of my questions have to do with the private drive. Is that private drive a separate piece of property, or is that an easement that runs down the back of everyone's individual property? And then also the question is there some sort of legal agreement that the neighbors all have about this private drive? And I wonder, does that establish its width and any other rules about it? Or is this just kind of a neighbors being nice to each other and it's not really defined in a legal document?
This is Beth, and I can speak to that. It is plot 030-002332-00. It is a separate plot, and again, from 89 to 2005, I paid the taxes on it. I didn't even realize it was a problem because when I refinanced, it didn't get moved over, and my name showed up and hasn't paid property taxes. I thought, what's up with that? Anyway, my understanding is originally it was a drive for my house, that as other homes started to being built, they provided an easement. And that's what I said. I didn't have sufficient notice to, do a title search or find out what the original easement stated because it wasn't time. But I think she provided the easement just for the common use of everyone, with the understanding that, there was no them really to get up to their home without building driveways up Broadway without it. But I'm not sure if that plot, the dimensions, if part of the easement was also X feet past the driveway. I'm not sure of the exact dimensions of that plot. And again, without time to kind of get someone to research it, I can't really answer those questions.
Just can I speak just real quick? The history of that is the original owner of Beth's house was Mr. Harry Fowler, Mr. and Mrs. Harry and Dorothy Fowler. And that was his driveway from Broadview up the hill around the bend back to the original house that Beth now owns. That was his personal driveway. As the new houses came, our house was second. And then as new houses came on board, out of the goodness of his heart, he granted an easement to the other property owners. There's only 6 of us up here. As stated, it's very unique. When Mr. Fowler passed away, everything was left to his wife, Dorothy, and she further granted an easement, whether it's lifetime and the dimensions of the easement. I know Beth really hasn't had any time to look into that, but there could be a factor there, kind of unknown. But generally speaking, we call that a common driveway to all 6 of our homes.
This is Charlie with the city. If you guys look at the survey for Joe Myers, there's a 20-foot dimension that's in Reserve A. That's the shared common area. On the auditor's website, it does list, I believe, all the 6 property owners for that parcel, if you will. So I don't know the width of your pavement. I thought it was 11 feet. So there's a 20-foot easement in there, according to this survey, if that helps you at all.
Well, yes, that's
All right,
great.
Thanks very much, Charlie and public commenters. Rick, I hope that answered your question. I will encourage my fellow board members, if they have a question, to please direct it to a single individual, because this is clearly a unique and complex case. But in order to keep this meeting somewhat manageable, as the chair, I'm going to ask you to ask your questions directly, preferably to either the applicant or staff, because public comment period has ended. If there are specific questions that you'd like to ask of commenters, please address them by name so that we can keep things moving along and get out of here before midnight.
So I would ask, I guess I've got a follow-up question on that I would ask Charlie about. Does it appears that is set up as a separate plat, right? A separate piece of property. And therefore the setback is all based on this property, the Fisher's property. And it's going to be 20 feet off of the street for the driveway property. Is that a correct interpretation of this, Charlie?
Well, I'm going to say that I'm not sure, it says edge of pavement. I'm not sure where that drive is in the relationship, but the 20 feet for the applicant is going to be taken off that 95-foot dimension line going east for the new.
Right. The line between the property pins is really.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions, Rick, or do you want to start sharing your view?
Well, I guess my one other question, and I'll address it again to Charlie, is about the Columbia Gas work. I'm not sure how it is that the city normally coordinates with Columbia Gas, but usually that work would be in the road easement, in the tree lawn, let's say, in most streets in Grandview. If Columbia Gas has work intended like this that is not necessarily in the easement, how do they just kind of have to coordinate that with all the individual property owners? Is that how they end up doing that?
Rick, my understanding is if that's a private, it sounds like they're going to do private work to upgrade it or change it. And you are correct. Most of the stuff we deal with is in the right of way, which would be near the street lawn. But since it's a private drive, they may be doing some upgrades to the gas lines. So, yeah, they would have to notify all those property owners.
So that would be, Columbia Gas would be then, they would have to deal with whatever the situation on the ground is at the moment, is I guess what I'm saying. They don't have any, if they don't have any easement ahead of time, they don't have any.
There's an easement going through the property. The subject property that we saw the boundary survey didn't indicate an easement of any kind. I suspect that easement is probably in that 20 feet that we saw in the survey that was Reserve A. But I don't know that. That's why, if you do something, you may want to have a condition that the applicant do some research and figure out where the gas line is. I suspect it's in that 20 feet, but without doing a title search and history research, which I think the applicant and their architect should have done at some point.
Okay.
This is Beth. May I speak?
I'm sorry, we've ended public comment. So in order to keep this meeting moving,
okay.
No, I'm going to ask you not to speak. I am going to ask, because I think Charlie asked a direct question of the applicant and the architect. So I'm going to ask the architect and or applicant to speak to the question of whether or not a title search and a review of potential easements on the property has been conducted.
This is Nate. When we closed on the property this past summer, there was no easements that were picked up according to the title company at that time of closing. So I'm aware of I was not made aware of any easements this past summer when we closed on the property.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Rick Kinzinger, any additional?
Yeah, I'll continue. I guess I have a question for the applicant. Nate, of those 3 mature trees back there, we've heard some things from your neighbors about them. I'm wondering your comment on if you believe those are going to make it, or which ones aren't going to make it if this is to be approved.
We looked at those trees. I don't think they're 100 years old, so I wanted to make that one clarification. We looked at those, and we do not anticipate. We anticipate 2 of the 3 having to come down. You can see on the corner of one of the drawings, there's some circles. We think that those are the location of the trees. There's one on the edge that looks like it could make it, but we're concerned about if we do the crawl space there, that the root system will not make it. We do intend to spend a decent amount of money on the landscaping package and would replace, as much we're not going to put, trees of that size back, obviously, but, we do intend to spend some money on the landscaping to replant some trees. But we think that 2 of the 3 will probably come down.
That being the southern 2 or the northern 2, which?
It would be the southern 2.
Okay. Well, I think before I get into discussing my thoughts on it, I'd like to give my fellow board members the opportunity to ask similar questions. I'm not sure what outstanding questions there might be out there before we start talking about our opinions of it. So I will pass that on if anybody's got any other questions.
This is Anna.
Yeah.
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead, Anna.
Tice. I have one additional question kind of about the lot coverage. Obviously, I don't think that there's a lot coverage issue, but I was curious about the square footage of the existing driveway and then also what the new drive would be. I think if you look at the code, there's a stipulation that the driveway should only cover 45% of the rear of the lot. And I think it looks like potentially it might get close depending on where that comes from, or that definition of the rear of the house.
This is the applicant. I'll defer to the architects on that. I don't have that calculation.
So it looks like we're adding about 220 square feet of new driveway. I have not done the calculation relative to the entire rear yard. But yeah, 220 seems to be the additional paving there.
Okay.
For the board and the applicant and anybody else, the code section that's being talked about, that 45% would actually occur from the back of the structure. And since they're putting the proposed addition on and it's attached to the house, the back of the garage is now the new structure. So I don't know, there was probably enough square footage there without that, and there may be so now, but we would have to look at it as the new addition, 45%.
Okay. So then does the existing, Charlie, this is a question for you. Does the existing driveway that goes down to the old garage, do we just, I guess, ignore that square footage of pavement then?
No, you take the line from the new 20-foot setback and go north and south and then do your calculation, because the back of the structure is now the new addition.
Got it. I guess my question is we're adding additional driveway space. You're basically going to have 2 driveways. So does some of that count? So some of that square footage count towards lot coverage or not?
For the 45%,
For the 45% or for the existing driveway that's already down the hill going to the garage?
yes, it would.
So that would, the existing driveway that is to the east of that line that we're drawing would count towards your lot cover or your,
No, that would not.
okay,
Just the part where you extended the new addition to the north. So
Okay.
anything west of that, we would consider as the lot coverage for the 45%.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Anna. Do you have any other questions, or Rick Stein and Joe Donofsky, do you want to ask any additional questions? Because I do have one myself, but I want to give everybody the opportunity. This is a complex case, and it's, as has been pointed out, rather unique environment in Grandview. So I want to make sure that we have the clear fact in front of us and we have a shared understanding. So Rick Stein, Joe, any questions here?
Sure. This is Rick Stein. I think I'm reading these plans correctly. So there's the westernmost part of the garage, which is a 9-foot section. There is no livable space on the second floor. Is that right? That's just all lofted storage within accessible via the garage?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I do have, questions about the roof line height and whether or not that constitutes, violating this, the idea of being a subordinate structure. But what I think one of my questions is, and I wish I knew exactly who to direct it to. I have taken everyone's notes. I read everyone's comments. And I'm trying to figure out, and I think I understand, but I would like some clarification. I'm trying to figure out if the opposition is based on the setback variance, opposition of the aesthetics, like it's too big, or some combination of both. And where I'm going with this is there, perhaps if there are issues of safety here, but because this is a private drive, it's as I understand it, the city really doesn't. That's not the city's realm, if you will. So the safety, the coordination, that would be among all the property holders. So I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to compromise? And so the garage has that 9-foot section. And the garage itself, and I did the math here, and I came up with 599 square feet. And I know as a board we've had discussions about, what is the garage for? Obviously, it's for storing cars and everybody puts a few things here and there, but is it I think we should take into consideration this is a second garage, and perhaps the size of the garage is excessive. I think could it still accommodate, let's say, 2 cars and a few things here and there while adjusting the length. And I'm specifically talking to this 9-foot section because having not being there right now and truly understanding what the line of sight concerns are, I'm wondering, is it if that were to be amended, would that alleviate the line of sight concerns? And if it did, would the addition still be opposed on the basis of it's just too much for the area. So again, I apologize. I wish I knew exactly who to direct that to, but those are my thoughts, opinions, and if there was, I guess we could. How about make the first public comment was from Ms. Showalter, and she addressed a lot of these issues, and one of my notes is it, are we opposing it on the basis of aesthetic review, or on the setback, or some combination of both? So I guess I would direct my question to Ms. Showalter.
Hi, thank you. It would still be opposed. The whole line of sight thing, it's not all height. If you think about that garage coming out as far west as it does, and then the cars that are going to be there, and then them talking about, they'll have 3 drivers soon, and then those cars, and then, when we're talking about space, you're taking out a ton of that yard. So what we're essentially looking at, even if we took the height off of there, is cars parked perpendicularly in there that come right up until the common drive. And so everything is essentially blocked in that sense. And again, it would be so helpful if all of you came out here and could see this. And I think that's one of the reasons that I think Natalie said it so beautifully was, hopefully we can we can put a pause on this and not do any approving and denying today, but really have you guys come out to see what we see, and to put yourself in our shoes and to see kind of some of the concerns come to life, because when you step here and you see what it is, it's not just a picture on a screen. It's so much more tangible, and you'll be able to feel it and see what we're seeing. So I'm hoping that answers your question. It's still a lot of building space on a small area. So that does not go away. And so, when Pierre said it would be great if we could do something north to south, not east to west, that would be fantastic. So yeah, I don't know. There's 2 driveways, 2 garages. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It does answer my questions. I will say I have been by the house, but I did not drive into the private drive because it is a private drive. And I was just trying to, be respectful of that, even though that has turned into, one of the major issues here.
I officially welcome you to come up our private drive.
I appreciate
59,
that.
come on up. I really do. I want you guys to see how this would impact us. I would love for you guys to come up. And the trees, taking out the trees, I could cry. And I know Aunt Beth could too. Our children play on them. I could go on and on. I'm sure I'm about to get cut off, but
Thanks, Michelle.
massive impact. I'm just going to say that. Massive impact.
I'm even though I'm the chair, I can't physically mute you, but I was getting very close to crying. Thank you for your comments. And I want to, I understand I think we all understand at least some of the emotions involved in this. I will say personally, I was the weird jogger today who did come into your private drive. I was wearing a mask. And I figured that my role on the BZA justified a bit of trespassing, if that was it. So I don't mean to cut you off because I don't take your comments seriously, but again, public comment has been closed. We are at this point trying to have a board discussion and get questions answered. But thanks for your clarification in response to Rick Stein's question. Joe, do you have any questions specifically or comments that you'd like to share at this point?
I have a couple points that can address some of the concerns that are being raised and questions that are being asked. First, with the garage, I'll remind the board that this application is different from many other applications, as this is an attached garage. Therefore, there is no restriction on living space above the garage. There are no restrictions from the majority of garage applications that we hear. because again, this is an attached garage. So the concerns with what's in the garage or what's above the garage, it doesn't matter to the board because it doesn't apply to this type of property. The roof height not being subordinate to the existing house, that's spelled out in the guidelines. And I'll remind the board that although those are well-written guidelines, again, those are guidelines that actually don't carry any legal weight or precedent. They are guidelines. This property is unique because the neighbors enjoy the rear of the property. You know, it would be different if they were coming off the front of the house and the front of the house was much taller than the existing or next to the house. That guideline would be more into play. So that is off the table. Size of the house in relation to the property and the nearby properties. The house is right next door. Yes, it's a large house, but when you look at the code looks at houses, I believe it's within 400 feet or basically to the next intersection. And unfortunately, Broadview has some very large houses, so the size of house does not come into play when it comes to a aesthetic session. There's been discussions about safety and viewing issues. Unfortunately, I don't want to say this that I don't think safety is not important, but I don't think those views are expressing the issue. The proposed garage and parking spaces do not block the line of sight any more than those little parking insets, I'd like to call them. Most importantly, the ones at 1067, which of course is Councilman Ganzera's home, those cars would be, and those are parked on the street in Google Maps if you look now. So the safety and vision concerns aren't a concern from my perspective because the garage itself is not going to impose any more than the cars that already park on the driveway, basically. We did mention about the windows. I know fenestration is difficult when you do an addition and you have an added degree of difficulty of a different plane that you're doing this addition on. So I know there's going to be great work already done there. I would like to see the windows match. If for some reason the new addition, the 4/4 windows are a better aesthetic for the entire house, maybe it would be something that could be different now if the intent was to replace the existing windows, but that's something that the homeowners would address with the architect if they were not willing to match or closer match the windows. So I thought I've hit most of the points that were discussed on some of the board comments and some of the public comments and my overall comments of the project.
Thank you, Joe. So I do have two questions. The first is for staff. I'm under the impression that the fire chief gets an opportunity to review all applications that we as a BZA get in order to assess the potential effect on emergency vehicle access. Is that assumption true? And did we get any comments from the fire chief on this particular case addressing emergency vehicle access as a result of this proposed addition?
Chair, yes, that's true. And there were no comments or recommendations from the fire department.
Thanks, Charlie. My second question is for the applicant. And there might be a follow-up for staff there as well. But my question to the applicant is, what did you do to notify your immediate neighbors of tonight's meeting and your plans in general?
I mailed out certified letters on December 1st. The receipts of those certified letters and notices were included in the submission package. So those were out. They were mailed from the main post office in hopes that they would get there even quicker. Obviously, that did not happen. In addition, I collected the links and to some of the information on the website, forwarded them over to Pierre, the neighbor, my neighbor, and ask him to please forward those out so people would have the information, easily accessible for the meeting. I also did, take time to meet with the neighbors, albeit it was this weekend. It was not 2 weeks ago, but it was over the weekend. So that's what we did. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thanks. Thanks very much. So December 1st, at least intent to send these out. And so I'm going to then ask a follow-up to staff, which is my guess is that some of this came in a little later as a result of postal issues. So my question to staff is, does this meet the requirements stipulated in the code related to notification for this hearing?
Chair, yes, this would meet the intent of the code. We can't answer for the timeliness of the post office. That is our process. We also do obviously post the stuff on our website, and it's generally a sign put on the property. And it's at the discretion of the board if they would or would not want to accept the fact that there was proper notice.
All right. Thanks very much, Charlie. That answers that question. So given that I think we've had kind of ample opportunity now to ask questions, and I think fairly from Joe Donofsky, we've heard sort of his analysis of the case. Any I guess I'm inviting the fellow board members to give us some additional insight into what they're thinking as we hopefully start to move to thinking in terms of a motion to do something tonight.
This is Rick Stein. I just want to clarify. I'm not concerned about living space above the garage. I was more or less throwing that out there as a discussion piece, perhaps for the neighbors and the applicant, if there were to be any sort of design alterations and like potentially, shrinking the size of the structure. However, I'm getting the impression that it's primarily the orientation that it seems to be the sticking point with a few people. As far as my opinions on this application, aesthetically, I think it passes. In my opinion, it passes the aesthetic review part. And then the only issue is the setback, and I think because of the existence of the private drive and considering the condominium property immediately to the west, that I think I'm more inclined to grant the variance in this case, because the circumstances are different than in many of the other parts of the city. So that's all I've got.
Thanks, Rick. That's very useful to hear for further discussion. Any other Anna, Rick Kinzinger? Do you want to sort of weigh in and give us some insight into your thoughts here?
I think I would like to see more information on the plans from the architects about exactly where that 20 feet is for the drive property, and maybe some follow-up with the gas company about where the intended plan is for that line to go, and if they do have a plan for that. Obviously, that's something that at some point in the future, if this addition is there, that they can reconfigure their plans. But I would imagine it would not be going straight through the drive. But I think that my concern is with giving a definitive answer is not knowing exactly where that line for the road and any easements are right now.
If I may, this is Liz. From examining the plans, it would appear that the 20-foot setback is from the eastern edge of the Reserve A. The architect seems to have incorporated the information regarding that preserve into their application, shown by the long dash, short dash lines here, and then there is a 20-foot setback from the line of the easement that would be nearest to the, or the reserve rather, that would be nearest to the rear line of the garage. So I believe that it is effectively set back 20 feet from the Reserve A and 50 feet, if you will, from the Summit Chase property.
Okay.
And then your other question, the gas line, I couldn't speak to it. Would certainly be unusual to have a gas line or utility line crossing one private property to serve another private property. I believe, in fact, that that's not permitted by any automatic sense. And if the purchase was recent, the Alta survey and title search that would have been done at the time should have uncovered anything that is existing by rights. And so I would have to think that there is no existing easement, or if there is, the title company would be on the hook for not providing that information to the owner when they purchase the property. If that makes sense.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. So I guess additional comments that I have are, I agree that I think that the windows should match the existing house unless there's a desire to change that at some point in the future on the existing house. I understand the neighbors' concerns about some line of sight and wanting to keep that green space as a community. If there would be a possibility for the owners to potentially step back the garage slightly, or maybe make the addition a little bit shallower from east to west, I think that, I guess, I don't know if that's a question for the owners, if that would be an option.
I think that is something, this is the applicant. I think that is something we can take a look at, willing to take a look at.
I think it's the architecture fits with the house. And I think aesthetically it meets the requirements.
So if you change the orientation of it, then we would not be talking about the setback variance. Is that what we're discussing?
Oh, Rick, I was thinking not necessarily changing the orientation of it, but just maybe it gets a little bit smaller. And then maybe we aren't necessarily talking about the variance.
It would, sorry, this is Thijs van Maskers. Thanks, Anna. So you're suggesting reducing the depth of the addition to the point where the variance is no longer necessary? So reducing by 10 feet?
Yes, if that's something that would potentially work for the applicant.
All right, thanks. That gives us some idea. Does the applicant want to respond to that additional clarification, or should we move on to Rick Hinzinger?
This is the applicant. I think I'd like to hold off on additional comment until towards the end, and have the architect address other issues. Thank you.
All right, thanks. That makes sense. Rick Hinzinger, returning to you.
Yeah, I don't have any additional questions. I'm really struggling with this one, as I think everybody is. Well, I guess one thing I did want to say is that I did walk up the private drive. I was so rude as to just walk up the private drive this past week. I was up there with my dog. Additionally, I've been in this house a few times with the Munsons, the previous owners. So I'm somewhat familiar with that area and up behind the house. I am really struggling with this because I think there is a real practical difficulty that is created by this lot, by the somewhat extreme sloping of the front half of the lot, and in the way that we talk about practical difficulty, it's usually that it's the practical difficulty imposed by unique conditions of the lot. So in my mind, we have that. I'm not worried about the Columbia Gas issue because if they don't have an easement back there now, which it sounds like they certainly don't, because that should have been uncovered in the recent title search, that if they don't have one back there now, then if they were planning on running something through there, that would be, they would have to take into consideration what the existing situation is at that time. The trees, I certainly think it would be amazing to keep those trees, but I also think it's within the homeowner's right to do with those trees as they wish. And so sometimes we try to work with homeowners to do things to preserve trees, but ultimately that's not our call. I don't think that's a good, I don't think that's a reason that we can agree to or deny a particular application. Yeah, I really struggle with that. I feel like if this was another street on an alley where we've got so many streets in Grandviews where the garages are on the alley in the back, I don't feel like we would be having this conversation. I think the concerns of the neighbors are valid, they're valid, and they reflect how unique this space is up there. But I think I come down on ultimately if this is the applicant's choice as to what they want to do with that property, I don't see how we have let's see how we have reasoning that we usually follow as a BZA that would support denying this. So I think I don't love it, but I don't see how I can be against it. So that's where I land on this.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. I will share a couple things. I think that this is a significant variance in terms of the sort of size of the variance, right? And we are asked when reviewing variances to weigh the impact on the community against the proposed use. And in that weighing, I think we are also considering the extent of the variance, which simply means that if you're asking us for a 20-foot variance, the threshold higher than a 10-foot variance, which is higher than a 5-foot variance in my view. And I think the extent of this variance that you're asking is significant. And I fully agree with some of my colleagues in observing that there is a practical difficulty here related to the slope of the site. But the question in my mind is whether the extent of that practical difficulty warrants a variance of this scope, or this size, I should say. So there is weighing there, and I think what Anna suggested, it would be a reduction of the depth of the addition would reduce the need, maybe not completely eliminate the need, but maybe potentially could reduce the size of the variance that you're asking for. So that is something that I am weighing. In terms of the aesthetic review, I think that the subsidiary nature of the structure, the proposed addition to the structure, stands in some tension with the height of the roof line as currently proposed. But here I will add that my view is that the topography of the site is actually such that it makes that perhaps less of a problem in my view than in should this be a fully horizontal site or a flat site, if you will. So I think, in my view, the practical difficulty is established, but I have a question about the extent of the practical difficulty in relation to the extent of the size of the variance that you're asking for. So, so that's what I'll say about the variance. A couple of other things. I am concerned about the short notice that several of your neighbors have received and have talked about tonight. I think these processes, such as Board of Zoning Appeals, work best if people have time to actually do some of their due diligence, particularly related to some of the legal complexities of this case. And so I'm frankly, personally inclined to motion to table. I will not yield that motion right now because I want to hear more from my colleagues. But that's a significant issue to me because I think this is a complex case with a nuanced legal history, and I believe, and I've heard tonight, that some of the neighbors clearly feel that they were not given adequate notice. Now, we as a board have to make up our own mind related to the code, whether or not we feel that formal notice procedures have been followed. But I do want to point out that I think that is a significant issue for me personally. Related to the size of the addition and the overall size of the house, which is an issue that came up both in the written comments, tonight's oral comments, I'll say that this proposed addition at 1,400 feet will significantly add to the size of the house, obviously, and will make it the second largest on the block. I calculated some floor area ratios. You're sort of at a 0.2, whereas most of the other floor area ratios on the private drive are in the sort of 0.13 range, except for the 1059, which has a 0.23. So in terms of the overall size of the house, while it is dissimilar from what I consider to be the relevant built environment immediately surrounding it, I do not believe it to be excessively dissimilar. So those would not be grounds for me to object to this proposal either. So that's, I'll close my own comments there from a substantive point of view, and then invite my colleagues on the board to respond to either my suggestion or idea of tabling this in part to give the applicant an opportunity to consider reducing the depth of the addition, and also to give perhaps additional neighbors some more time to think and look at some of the legal complexities of this case. But I'm open to other motions as well, if you feel so called. Fellow board members.
Yes, I'm sorry to interject. This is Joe Danofsky. One of the things that you mentioned I just wanted to highlight is they are asking for the variance because this is an attached garage. It's already been established that they can do a detached garage 3 feet from the rear property line without any BZA requirements, assuming that that proposed detached garage would meet the aesthetic review through the building department versus the BZA. So there's always the chance that it could come to the BZA for aesthetic review. But a detached garage would not come to the BZA for approval, just aesthetic review. And that would be 3 feet from the rear property line versus the 20 feet from the rear property line that's being proposed. So unfortunately, I feel that although the variance is significant from a percentage proposal standpoint, that the variance was basically a necessity to avoid a detached garage, which would be more imposing, just based on the public comments I've heard. I think this is a reasonable request from a variance standpoint.
Can I just say, they don't want a detached garage. You know, they want all this extra space. If they want a detached garage, I'll get them a storage unit. Public comment.
Sorry, Michelle
Well,
Walker. Sorry.
I'm muting myself. Sorry.
The only caveat to that is they could put a detached garage and not have to do any of this process. So because they're doing an attached structure, therefore stuck with the setback of 30 feet. That's the difference.
So Joe, I'm gonna nuance that, because as you pointed out, it's within the building department's discretion. So, you know, and Charlie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if the applicant were to come back with an application for a detached garage, it is within the building department's discretion to decide whether or not we see that as a BZA for aesthetic review purposes. And I am not comfortable indicating at this point how I would react to an aesthetic review procedure of a detached garage 3 feet set apart from this particular private way. I don't know. I'm not going to foreshadow how I would decide one way or the other, because this is not what's in front of us. I'm reacting to what is in front of me today. This is also why, even though the possibility of an addition to this house facing Broadview Avenue directly, I understand that legal possibility is there. And I understand that that would not trigger the kind of variance that we're talking about today. And I believe that, again, it would be within the building department's discretion to determine that aesthetic review by the full board would be required. And I might react one way or another to aesthetic review considerations of an addition proposed on the other side of the house. I'm just not going to say, and because I don't know how I'm going to react to that, but the idea that a detached garage would not require any form of scrutiny is simply not, in my view, correct. It could very well come back to us for aesthetic review procedures, and it's up to each individual board member to then determine how he or she would react to that particular proposal. So my view is we are reacting to what's in front of us tonight. And I've given my view on what I think a logical and reasonable course of action would be, given everything that I've said. But I do want to point out that the idea that overnight a detached garage could be built 3 feet off of this private way is simply not in line with what I believe the process in Grandview Heights to be.
I agree, but since you made the point to make the point, I also want to remind everyone that I also made that when I made my statement that it may or may not come back to the BZA, and I know that's not something that we're considering today. I was simply referring to the need for a greater variance than what some other variances may be, since we were comparing percentage and feet and those types of things. Just a point. With respect, of course.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for cooling me off a little there. I don't know why I was so agitated about that. Sorry. Sometimes these procedural points just get to me. Anyway, I will stop talking now and leave my other board members to comment on how they'd like to proceed here.
Well, in the old-fashioned days where we used to do this when we were all sitting in the same room, I think by now we would have a feeling by interacting with the applicant as to how open they are to possible revisions to possibly delaying this a month. So I guess I would like to just ask that as a more direct question to the applicant, their thoughts on looking at revisions to this, yeah, or any other changes that might be open to, or is this a are they more driven for us to just vote on what's in front of us today and go from there?
I'm certainly going out of bounds and I apologize, but I wanted to get more clarification on the notice to property owners. I know the city has
This
mentioned.
I'd like to answer, Joe. In our zoning code 1139.05 D talks about public notice. And the notice of hearing before the BZA shall be forwarded for publication in one or more of the newspapers of general circulation within the city at least 7 days prior to the date of the hearing. I think we have met that notice required in the code. There's also the additional notice in the application that talks about 10 days to the parties of interest. But even in the application, it talks about the publication of the board's agenda in the Tri-Village News, either as a paid advertisement or as a news item shall constitute the required notice as to each item appearing on such agenda. So I think in terms of the notice has been given, unless someone has an issue with that.
No, that clarifies it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if Nate Fisher, if you want to comment on your thoughts on looking into any revisions or how you're thinking about that.
You know, I'd be open to looking at these rear setback. And I think that we are open to adjusting the windows to meet the existing windows, the muttons that are currently in place. I'd like to also give my architects a chance to respond to some of the comments, if at all possible.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have any additional comments, but we can certainly go back and look at the rear yard setback as Nate stated. I'm not sure if that means that aesthetic would also have to come back for approval or if it would be approved conditionally. And we come back later regarding the rear yard variance.
I think typically we would want to see the changes incorporated before approving either of those.
That was my assumption. Thank you for that.
Any other board members want to tell us what what they're thinking in terms of what they would like to see as next steps, or should we table any other guidance for the applicant and architect?
As Megan Genselman, I believe we are going to table the application until next month.
All right. In that case, can I get a motion from one of the board members?
Yeah, I move to table BZA case 18-2020.
Joe Janowski, I second.
Kinzinger,
Yes.
Calno,
Yes.
Janosky,
Yes.
Stein,
Yes.
Chair Van Massakers.
Yes.
Tabled.
All right. Thank you very much. On to other business. Is there any other business?
No other business today.
Any staff communications?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, I thank everybody for their patience and commitment to the community, and hereby I adjourn today's meeting. Thank you all.